in the southwest.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
It's the final week to see how you could win your mortgage or rent paid for a whole year. That's a cash lump sum equivalent to 12 of your monthly mortgage or rent payments, right up to a whopping £20,000. Plus, we'll add an extra £5,000 on top for good measure. Make sure you don't miss out as lines close on the 29th of August. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entry start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB15 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 29th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Kerr weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Miriam, you can't be serious. Scrapping the triple lock on state pensions? Madness.
Andrew, we just can't carry on pretending. The numbers just don't add up. We've got to be honest with people. We've got to face the facts. That's what people want.
Well, that's what you get on GB News and on Britain's newsroom. Lively debates, lively conversation.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first, and we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pearce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good evening. It's me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, with State of the Nation live from Somerset tonight.
If you come to the UK illegally, you will be detained and deported and never, ever allowed to stay. Period.
Nigel Farage announces plans for the mass deportation of up to 600,000 migrants, even to regimes like Eritrea and Afghanistan. These proposals are not for the faint-hearted, but can Nigel's plan actually work? Labour promised to get Britain working, but the opposite has happened. 6.5 million people are now on out-of-work benefits, 500,000 more than when Labour came into office. Can Labour ever get people back to work? Since Labour took power, a pub a day has closed and farmers are being taxed to the brink. These aren't just industries, they are a way of life. I will be joined by the renowned restaurant critic, commentator and now restaurant owner William Sitwell to discuss the future of our hospitality and farming industry. And as we're in Somerset, I'm going to be talking to a pillar of Somerset society about why the sun, as you can see, always shines in God's own county, especially in West Hertfordshire. State of the Nation starts now. As ever, let me know your views on mailmog at gbnews.com. But particularly this evening, Jeremy Corbyn's asking for advice on what to call his new party. Send those in on the mailmogs and we'll pass them on. He might want to call himself the Looney Tunes Party, something like that, but you can come up with your own suggestions. But now, it's your favourite time of the day, the news bulletin from our Paddington studio.
64 people have been formally charged under the Terrorism Act for allegedly showing support for the proscribed group Palestine Action. All those charged were initially arrested in central London on 2 separate Saturdays last month. If found guilty, they could face up to 6 months in prison. They are expected in court in October. And the leader of Reform UK has unveiled his plans to deport all small boat migrants, warning migration now poses a genuine threat to public order.
Today we launch Operation Restoring Justice. And as far as the people of this country is concerned, frankly, these measures can't come soon enough.
He says only mass deportations and a ban on asylum claims for illegal arrivals will restore trust. Speaking earlier, the Reform leader accused successive governments of failing the public and said outdated treaties must be scrapped. However, the Conservative leader, Kemi Badenoch, has accused Reform of reheating and recycling Tory plans on immigration.
Nigel Farage is copying our homework. We put out a deportation bill in May. The stuff that actually works and what he said has come from there. But the truth is, he is not doing the thinking, we are. And just like we've seen with the Labour governments who didn't do their thinking in opposition, there'll be a disaster in government and in particular a disaster on the economy.
The Reform leader also pledged to pull Britain out of key international agreements, including the European Convention on Human Rights. Earlier, the Housing Minister, Matthew Pennycook, told us that the Labour government would welcome discussions about changing how the CHR operates, but would not.
We don't think it's in our national interest to withdraw completely, put ourselves in the same camp as 2 other countries, Russia and Belarus. But that is not to say that we don't think the Convention needs reform. We're making the case for reform in Europe. The Justice Secretary was at the Council of Europe in June doing just that. And we are looking about how the Convention is implemented domestically.
Poundland has avoided entering administration after a restructuring plan was approved by a judge at the High Court days before the company was due to run out of money. Barristers for the retailer had told a hearing earlier today that it would be placed into administration by Friday and was set to run out of money by the 7th of September if the plan was not approved. The scheme will see up to £60 million of new funding injected to keep the retailer afloat, among some other terms. And he knelt to the ground, pulled out a ring and said, "Marry me, Taylor Swift." In the last hour, the pop superstar has announced her engagement to the NFL player Travis Kelce. The 35-year-old made the announcement in a joint Instagram post with the Kansas City Chiefs player, which showed pictures of him proposing in a garden. The couple have been dating since 2023. Well, those are the latest GB News headlines for now.
Tune into GB News Radio wherever you are, online, on DAB digital radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Welcome back to State of the Nation. Nigel Farage wants to deport 500 to 600,000 illegal migrants in his first term if Reform were to win the next election.
The only way we will stop the boats is by detaining and deporting absolutely anyone that comes via that route. And if we do that, the boats will stop coming within days. If you come to the UK illegally, you will be detained and deported and never, ever allowed to stay, period.
A radical idea, but it's never been achieved in this country on anything like this scale. It does, however, echo Donald Trump's immigration and customs enforcement scheme in the United States, which has been remarkably effective, reducing illegal migration in April by 91%. The Liberal Democrats leader, Ed Davey, was visiting Somerset, Cheddar, not far from here, earlier today, and he said this.
Looks like Nigel Farage wants to follow his hero Vladimir Putin and pull out of the EHCR. I think Winston Churchill would be turning in his grave at that. You know, the truth is, it was Farage's Brexit that caused the small boats. Before Brexit, we could send back any illegal immigrant coming over in a small boat. Actually, Nigel Farage should have apologised today.
So David goes to Cheddar and decides to be cheesy. However, these proposals are not for the faint-hearted. Deportation deals, even with awful, evil, oppressive regimes like Afghanistan, Eritrea and Iran, ones that everyone thinks of as unsafe countries, would see people sent back to them. Nigel Farage is once again setting the pace of the immigration debate. He's pushing against what it's thought people will put up with. And already the government this afternoon has said it would look at deporting failed asylum seekers to Afghanistan and Eritrea. Radical, yes. Popular, almost certainly. But are they actually workable? Deportations on this scale would require a remarkable legal overhaul. It's not just quitting the ECHR, the European Convention on Human Rights, or repealing the Human Rights Act and leaving the Refugee Convention. The government says that it's committed to deporting illegal migrants, but today, in its wishy-washy way, it said this.
We've been very honest about the fact that we were never going to fix the broken immigration and asylum system we inherited overnight, but we are making tangible progress in terms of deporting people with no right to be here. This ambitious pilot scheme we've got in place with France now. Asylum seekers have been detained under it. We'll see removals to France in the coming week. But when it comes to the ECHR, we don't think it's in our national interest to withdraw completely, put ourselves in the same camp as two other countries, Russia and Belarus. But that is not to say that we don't think the convention needs reform.
That's absolute nonsense, frankly, that we can't do it inside the convention. And that's what Farage has realised. And to do this, frankly, he has to take on the bloc and win. But that's not going to be easy, because one legal eagle has even claimed that common law, the basis of British law, would debar such deportations, and that there would be a battle over the supremacy of Parliament if that turned out to be the case. The old parties, my party indeed, and the Labour Party, have never pledged action as radical as this on such a large scale, and the measures they have brought in have been repeatedly blocked by the courts under human rights grounds and vigorously opposed by the House of Lords, by the Blob. Reform seems to me to be seeking a constitutional showdown with the establishment, the like of which has not been seen since Lloyd George's budget in 1909. It's potentially very exciting. As ever, let me know your views via mailmog@gbnews.com. But now, I'm extremely pleased to be joined by the political commentator Fahima Mohammed. Fahima, thank you so much for joining me. This is really radical stuff, isn't it? But it's doing what people want, what voters want, and not doing what we're told to do by the international elite.
As much as we have people wanting to have these kind of laws in place and deportation in place, and yes, there is a genuine concern of so many people coming into the country in an irregular, illegal way, we do have to understand, no matter, as you explained before, no matter who runs the country, we do have strict laws. And let's be real, Dominic Raab tried exactly that in 2022 when he was the Justice Secretary, and he failed miserably, even with the whole government machine behind him. Why? Because Human Rights Act underpins Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, as you mentioned. It's built into the Good Friday Agreement, and ripping up, all of that would create a constitutional and international crisis. It will also cost billions, wrecking our extradition deals and strip away rights that protect ordinary Brits. We are thinking of putting Brits first. This is actually taking away more rights from them. And unfortunately, Farage is acting like a Trump minion right now with these really extraordinary Hollywood ideas, when actually in reality, he knows the law, but he's playing into the kind of unpopular, I would say, and uneducated people that actually are going to fall for this because they don't understand the actual laws of this country. And you even mentioned how difficult it was. So I don't see how he's actually proposing this without it being turning out like a joke. We are talking about Keir Starmer, you turning everything. We're going to see the same thing with Nigel Farage. And even if it was to go ahead, it will take years to implement, probably more than a term that he might even fulfill if he gets in.
But isn't this the problem? That he is grasping the nettle, that he recognises that our laws are made by the King in Parliament. There is no senior law in this country. Any act of Parliament is the highest law. It overrides any international agreement. We have a dualist system. International agreements do not become domestic law without Parliament saying so. And actually, if he were to legislate to say that it is legal to send people back to Afghanistan, that would be the law, and we have no obligation to give extreme rights to foreigners in this country.
That will be one thing that if he was to procure, but at the same time, there are the logistics of it. There is no detention capacity. There's no return partners. The cost dwarfs savings. At the end of the day, there's so many hurdles to overcome. It's not just one thing. Even if you say that you're going to, go over the kind of laws that are existing right now and get that through, there'll be other things. And there is no such thing as even an extradition completely and a deportation like people want. And I really do believe, unfortunately, and I don't want to constantly call this out, that it's only because certain people are coming from certain countries that it's a problem. If it was coming from a European country, it wouldn't be a problem. And I really do believe that this is showing a different sense of Britain that we tried to get rid of, years ago, decades ago, but it's coming back really, unfortunately. Even with the problems that exist, it's not really the problems of the country economically that we need to resolve right now, and it's overtaking real issues and deterring from what we need to address. And especially Nigel as well, he's actually going and, can't even contain having his councillors stay more than 2 weeks in one of their constituents, let alone take away 600,000 illegal immigrants, which I don't even know where those figures have come from, because I don't even think we have that many over there. And if it is, that's a huge amount to commit to.
Well, let's go through this in stages, because I think you've now accepted that we can actually change the law, and that's important. The second is the motivation, but Brexit was strongly directed by mass migration, and that was of people from a very different set of Western European countries that the country was unhappy with. And then there's the issue of the cost. But the cost of this is actually less than the current cost of our immigration policy, the millions of pounds every day we're spending putting people up in hotels, the benefits we're giving them, the money we're giving to the French, which is going to be about £500 million a year to do absolutely nothing. So the money's there, the legislation can be there. Doesn't it really just require the will, the determination, the backbone of a government to make it happen?
No, absolutely not. We already had all of this in place when we had Brexit. We had the returns agreement. When that was actually put to an end in 2020, the government, at that point, actually did, have lots of warnings, but unfortunately did not listen. Everything was in place. We didn't have this problem. It's Nigel Farage who actually
I'm sorry to interrupt. Fahima, I'm sorry to interrupt. But you know that, you know that's wrong. Under the Dublin agreements, we took more people from Europe than we sent back. It didn't help us get rid of illegal immigration in this country. The Dublin agreements, as I say, brought people in net rather than removing them. So it wasn't a pre-Brexit nirvana, it was a pre-Brexit failure.
Not really, because you can actually return them, and you were forced, to actually send them back to France if we were still with the EU. We cannot do that now, and it is going to cost unnecessarily. We have to understand that there are, certain things that we benefited from if we were still in the EU, and we didn't have that type of migration also coming in. It really, even if it was, at the end of the day, the processes were done and it was never an issue. If you're saying that's what it was, then why is it only raised now? And yes, even the percentage has raised right now. Again, it's a deflect to the real issues. It really is.
It simply didn't work pre-Brexit. This is a smokescreen that we removed a few hundred people and we took in over 1,000 people under the Dublin agreements. So it's just wrong to say that Brexit made this more difficult. Brexit gives us the freedom to leave the European Convention on Human Rights, which we were obliged to be a member of as part of our membership of the European Union, and it also frees us from the European Convention, the EU one, the Charter of Fundamental Rights, and therefore we can make our own choices now. It's just so far we have failed to do so. And that's what Nigel Farage and Reform are proposing, using the powers we've got to remove people who have no right to be in this country. That's the key thing. They are here illegally and they ought to go. The law should be upheld properly.
Well, when they arrive, there is a due process, and because of that due process, they are actually deemed as irregular when it comes to Gov UK, as well as the official national statistics. So it's an administrative process. So the legality of irregular does come in. They are not criminalized straight away. That's why they are not deterred and they are not arrested. And we do not have those deportation kind of like alignments and agreements. Whereas with Brexit, we could have actually sent them back straight away to France and forced that. We cannot do that now. Regardless if we did it before or not, we would have had Interpol, we would have had more intelligence, we would have had better sort of regulation and border control before they even enter here. And we would have had much more sort of ways in which we could have less people coming in, because why did it only happen after Brexit, majority of it? You've even seen the actual figures of...
It didn't. They simply came in lorries prior to Brexit rather than in small boats. Small boats
Not
took place later. Anyway, thank you, Fahima. Very kind of you to join me down the line. I would just make one point, that calling illegal migrants irregular is the worst euphemism going. In a moment, Labour has promised to get Britain working, but the opposite has happened. Indeed, the number of people who aren't in work has gone up by 500,000. That's coming up shortly.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
I remember being introduced to Ken Bates.
Chelsea.
Used to own Chelsea, and just asked to sit down with him and then spend the next sort of 2 or 3 hours with him having lunch. And an ex of Donald Trump, Ivana Trump, his wife, and
Oh, you had dinner with her?
Yeah, I remember having dinner actually with Catherine Zeta-Jones.
Did you?
Yeah.
You said earlier you couldn't think
of anyone. You couldn't think of anyone else listing them.
I can't think of anyone. That literally just literally come into my head.
Hi, Catherine Zeta-Jones. Can we go back to that, please?
Catherine Zeta-Jones was... I used to live in a flat in Fulham, and I'm up at the top of the flat, and I was a sports reporter at the BBC, and I went round to Pizza Express, and I'm sitting eating, having my dough balls and everything else I was having, and reading the back pages of the papers in preparation for the work that I was doing the next day.
Yeah.
And I walked out of the cafe, and the beautiful, most stunning woman, Catherine Zeta-Jones, was walking by, and she said, "Oh, hello, Eamon." And then Welsh accent.
Really?
Hello, Eamon. How are you? And we were standing talking, and we were nattering away, and she said, "Anyway, why are we standing talking in the street? Have you eaten?"
And I went, said no.
No, I didn't say no. I went, no. And I went inside, and I remember Pizza Express was empty. And the waiter saw me again, and I went and sat down with Catherine, and he said, "And you, sir, are you eating?" And I went, "Yes." He said, "What are you having?" I said, "Could I have the dough balls?" And I've never been able to eat dough balls again since.
GB News, the People's Channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around, a nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m, only on GB News.
Welcome back to State of the Nation. I'm still Jacob Rees-Mogg. With mail Moggs have come in, but I've got a special guest reader tonight in the form of my one and only daughter, Miss Mary Rees-Mogg.
Pat says Jeremy Corbyn should call his new party Bad Muesli because it has one sultana and a load of nuts.
That's very good. I like that. One sultana being his co-founder of the party, and a load of nuts, yes. Slightly disrespectful, but I think a fair point. What else have we got, Mary?
Mary says the party for Corbyn is already available. It's called the Monster Raving Loony Party.
Oh, that's genius. They might get into copyright disputes with the Monster Raving Loony Party. Screaming Lord Sarch sadly no longer with us, but the people running it might have a word or two to say about that.
That's true. And Tom says, Dear Jacob, are you a big Taylor Swift fan? And what are your thoughts on her marriage?
I have a wonderful tailor who is suitably slow, actually, so I would call my tailor due pace rather than swift, if I think is the right answer. But always good news that people are getting engaged and in due course married, and hope they're blessed with many little swifts. It's like a nest of singing birds. And what else have we got?
And finally, Lisa says, I just wanted to say how much I'm enjoying the State of the Nation from your wonderful home in Somerset, and what an amazing job your children are doing reading out the mail Moggs.
Well, that's you. We had Alfred and Sixtus on yesterday. I think Anselm's going to be helping tomorrow. Peter is away, so Peter won't be joining us. Now, our guest hasn't come on, so I'm afraid I'm going to have to put you on the spot, because we're going to need to continue the conversation we had a bit before about children and technology. Do you think it is right that restrictions are placed on 16 and 17-year-olds as you get older, or do you think people should use technology as they wish once they get into their later teenage years?
I think people need to learn how to use technology as they wish. I think we're forgetting all about freedom of the individual. It's one thing for that to be your own choice or your parents' choice, but it's another for it to be government restriction. Because there's a fine line between your own control. It's not the limit itself that's the problem. It's who is setting this limit? Why are they setting this limit? Is this just a broad blanket for everybody? Or is this something specific? It can't be done by the government.
And should the state interfere that much in family life, or should families be free to make decisions for themselves, recognising that some parents will be less responsible than others, and it has to be said some parents will do what they're told by their children, which you may have come across?
Well, absolutely. The government is not Mary Poppins. It is not the government's role to parent children. That is the parents' role. It's the role of the individual to control themselves, and it's the job of the daughters to control their fathers.
Well, that's a very good point on which to go back to the main topic of this evening about Labour sweeping to power, promising to get Britain working, yet the number of people on jobless benefits has continued to rise, now hitting a staggering 6.5 million, 500,000 more since Sir Keir Starmer entered Downing Street. Just shows Britain sliding deeper into a welfare state, with over 15% of working-age adults now being on out-of-work benefits, the highest level on record. Well, I'm very pleased to have Peter Edwards with me today. Peter, shouldn't the government be ashamed of itself? Its record is absolutely appalling. It's ruined the economy, unemployment, out-of-work benefits have gone up. It's all a disaster. They should pack up and go home.
Well, good evening, Sir Jacob. I think you should be a caricaturist or a satirist with that intro. I'm sure a reasonable person like you would accept we had a pretty flat economy for the last 5 or 6 years of the Tory government. There were many workforce-related problems arising from COVID, particularly the enormous spike in people on sickness benefits. And rolling back the clock a bit more, you had Ian Duncan Smith's botched introduction of universal credit. that was both a cut and a delay and a reform. We are where we are. I think we'd all accept Britain has wider economic problems, and they'll perhaps take a bit longer than 12 months to turn around.
But it's actually got worse, and we had 2.2% inflation last year. We had pretty much record employment. Things have just been getting steadily worse. Fewer vacancies, more unemployment. The Labour Party's made a hash of it in the shortest possible time.
Well, I think we're all right to be vigilant about inflation, particularly as it surged to 10% under Jeremy Hunt and the Conservatives. But we've had Rachel Reeves, and I'm sure she comes in your program, always points to those handful of interest rate cuts since the general election. But, you know, Jacob, again, I appeal to your grasp of facts and to your grasp of the numbers. Basically had half a decade of lost growth, stagnant growth, and the jury's out about whether Labour can recover that. I think they can. There are lots of quite boring, unsexy things like planning reform that's an incentive to GDP growth, and increasing the minimum wage that's an incentive for work, that would help, but they will take a little bit of time to come through.
All right, Peter, let's take both of those, because I agree with you on planning reform. I think planning reform is absolutely essential. But that hasn't happened, has it? That they didn't really know. They knew that planning reform was a good idea, but they didn't know what planning reform they were going to introduce. And therefore, we've had another year with low levels of planning reform, with an inability to challenge the very slow sclerotic system that we've got and that we've built up over the years, based, of course, on an act of Clement Attlee.
I think planning is pretty painful, to be fair. Whoever's been in government for the last 30 years, and folk often point to the Thames Tideway Tunnel, which has a multi-billion-pound bill, I think, before a shovel has been laid in the ground, i.e. the multi-billion-pound bill came from the planning requirements. But yeah, planning's pretty ugly, whether you're just building a conservatory or you're looking to build a factory. I think that will take time to turn around. I think perhaps my critique, and I want to be a critical friend of the Labour Party, I'm a member and I love it, which is after the general election did the right things on policy, planning reform, talking loudly about it, sending a message to the international markets and setting up the state-owned energy company. But at the same time, they were quite tonally downbeat about the economy, and that may have created a bit of confusion for investors, because they did some quite good things on policy, but the language was quite negative a year ago.
Yes, certainly talking the economy down before the last budget had an effect. But I also wanted to ask you about the minimum wage, because putting the minimum wage up when the economy is weak has had an inflationary effect and has been very difficult for the margins of hospitality businesses and low-margin businesses, and that actually reduces employment and increases inflation. And so that's one of those things where it's a nice to do for governments, it seems popular, but it has economic consequences that aren't always favourable.
I strongly disagree. The hospitality industry was on its knees after COVID, and I don't blame Boris Johnson and Tories for that. COVID was just so enormous and so dreadful that it hammered hospitality businesses, and they had a sharp V-shaped sink, but then a very slow U-shaped recovery. Secondly, I make the wider point that if you're a small business, and I've run a small business, but if you're a small business and you can't afford to pay people 10 or 12 people an hour, that kind of really casts doubt over the viability of your business. Thirdly, you're old enough to remember Michael Heseltine. When the minimum wage came in under Blair and Brown, he said that will cost 1 million jobs, and that was proved very, very wrong indeed.
Well, the minimum wage came in at a point of high economic growth, and it seems to me that minimum wages, and at a low level, are affordable when economies are strong. They become problematic when economies are weak, and putting them up when you're hitting businesses both with a national insurance rise and with a minimum wage rise has tipped some businesses over the edge. And that ties in with this 500,000 increase in the number of out-of-work benefits, because it's just made it that much harder for businesses. It came at the wrong time.
Well, Jacob, the right, and you know, we're both ideological creatures or the other end of the spectrum, but the right has been vehemently against around wages, minimum wages, for about 30 years or so. For me, it's a fundamental issue of fairness. And were you to say as an SME, well, my business is going great guns, but I'm paying the staff £7 an hour, I'm not sure that's a viable business, and it's definitely not fair. And I say that for personal experience working in a shop.
All right. A lot of people are saying, though, that putting it up has changed the difference between break-even to loss. But thank you very much, Peter. Also, thank you for Mary for bravely standing in unexpectedly because there was delay getting our guest on the line. I think that was heroic of her. Anyway, since Labour took power, a pub a day has closed. Farmers are being taxed to the brink. And these aren't just industries, they're our way of life. I'll be joined by Mary's godfather, renowned restaurant critic and now restaurant owner William Sitwell, to discuss what the future holds for these vital industries.
Good evening. This is your latest GB News weather update coming to you from the Met Office. Most places are going to have a largely dry night with today's showers largely dying out. However, there is a weather system out in the Atlantic that's heading our way, and it's going to bring a spell of pretty heavy and perhaps even thundery rain for many places as we go through tomorrow. Before that though, like I said, a largely dry night across many spots, just a few showers, particularly towards the north and west. Under the dry, clearer weather, things may turn a little fresh for some of us. That being said, most towns and cities holding up in double digits. Just a few rural spots could just about fall into single figures. And then it's a largely fine start to the day for many places. Across much of Scotland, there will be a good deal of sunshine early on, just a few showery bursts here or there, particularly around some central areas. There could be a couple of showers and they could be a little bit on the heavy side. A different story for Northern Ireland though. That weather system I highlighted here, it is going to be bringing a pretty wet start to the day, and there could be some gusty winds, maybe even some rumbles of thunder mixed in with it as well. Similar across parts of Western Wales, southwest England, an unsettled start here. Elsewhere across much of England though, it's a fine picture through much of the morning, but that whole frontal system is going to march its way eastwards across the whole of the country. So most of us will see a spell of heavy rain, and there could be some thunder, some gusty winds mixed in. The further east you are, the later it's going to arrive. With the slightly more unsettled weather, temperatures are going to be down a couple of degrees and feeling a little bit fresher as well compared to today. Then into Thursday, and it's a bit of a westy split. Eastern parts having a lot of fine weather still. Further west, a greater chance of some frequent showers, and these could be heavy, perhaps even thundery, and a few of those showers will push their way towards the east as well. Another showery day likely on Friday and on Saturday, but that does bring the potential for some heavier rain, perhaps in the southwest.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's political podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's political podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience, because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits. You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless. But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show. Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates, 5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5. You got me. You got me good there. Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show. It's not a bad brand. Yeah. Uncensored.
Very, very racy tonight.
On the unpredictable.
What does she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
Pubs, hospitality and farming have caught the headlines ever since Labour took office last summer. 8 pubs closing per week, beer duty going up, and the government wanting to ban outdoor smoking, all after the industry was crippled by lockdowns. Farmers are facing being taxed into oblivion by new death duties imposed on them by the socialists in power, attacking the very people who put food on our tables. Not only are these industries vital for our survival as a people, but they are institutions of Britain's very way of life. So what does the future hold? Well, I'm particularly pleased to be joined now by the restaurant critic, TV personality and restaurant owner, William Sitwell.
Not yet. I have an idea. I need to raise some money. I'm not a restaurant owner yet.
Well, you're getting going on it, and I'm really interested in that because I think, first of all, you found that raising the money has been much easier than you expected. But aren't you quite brave that hospitality has been hit by the increase in national insurance, by the increase in the minimum wage? Lots of hospitality is closing down, but you're getting into it.
Yeah, I think the latest statistics are that about 80,000 job losses can be directly linked to the government's sort of almost malicious policies. And we've got food inflation that's resulting. I mean, you only have to talk to restaurateurs who will say it's not surprising that food inflation is going to happen because they have to pass the costs on. You know, there's never a good time to open a restaurant. And I think if you're a restaurant critic, you might think that for a critic to open it, you know, you've got to be a particularly special kind of lunatic. But I live near this beautiful town of Wiveliscombe in West Somerset. And over the last 2 years, we've seen the closure of 3 of the town's hospitality venues. A little restaurant called Zeki, a cafe place and interior shop called the Courthouse, and now the White Hart. And the White Hart closed last Monday, so literally a week ago. And I was at the Wivy show judging cakes and scones, as I usually do, and the word around Wivy was of this terrible thing that was happening. And so I went up to find the local publican, who's a very successful businessman with his wife, Millie, John and Millie Cowden. They run several pubs across the region. They run them confidently. They're always open, which is key. And I said, you know, what are your plans? I've got an idea for a chic hotel, an Italian restaurant, a bar and a workspace. And so we decided to collaborate. And I put a little message out on my channels at 4 o'clock last Monday. By 8 o'clock, we'd had Small Enterprise Initiative Scheme, SEIS or EIS. It's the government's incentive to invest in small enterprise. We had £140,000 worth of pledges, which over the past week's gone up to about 600. It's not quite enough because we need to buy the property, but it shows that in spite of economic calamity, people need somewhere to eat, and people like the idea of someone stepping in and saving a cornerstone of culture.
But do you see a commonality in the reasons as to why those 3 outlets closed down? Was it the way they were run? Was it policy? Was it regulation? Or was it a lack of demand that people are feeling less well off for all sorts of reasons and therefore aren't eating out as much as they were?
There are unique reasons why each of those places have shut, some due to personal relationship issues, some because businesses have morphed into other things, and others because literally I think they've just struggled to have the business and struggled to have a big strong idea. I think you have to be very, very confident when you're in hospitality. It's a bit like being a stand-up comedian. You have to completely believe in your jokes, otherwise people won't find them funny. You've got to have this confidence, and it is a sort of chicken and egg thing. And if you haven't got the confidence to have a big idea, and you haven't got the confidence to raise the money to throw at it, people won't have the confidence to come to you. I think nationally, where the picture is rather clearer than a few anecdotal, bits of evidence. Obviously, food margins have shrunk, so it's harder to make money. The cost of employing people, this is the most savage thing, and that is, your previous guest earlier said, it's post-COVID. It's not. This is a Reeves and Starmer policy of raising national insurance contributions for employers and also raising the minimum wage. Sounds great, but the problem is, in the same way that the government have targeted the non-DOMs for some sort of rather infantile dislike of them, who the hell do you think works in these places? It is the working people. And if you make it harder to employ them, you will employ fewer people, or you will have to raise your prices, which puts off customers and means their spend is lower. So there's this whole raft of reasons, and just a general shakiness in consumer confidence. The fact that supermarkets are able to stock and sell alcohol for far less money, and so there's fewer reasons to go out. If it costs £7 for a pint, and you can get one for £2 at Asda, you've really got to have a reason to go out. And that's very sad, because it's so important to go out and hang out with the locals and join the spirit of community.
And this is the other part of what you're doing, and it's something you write about in your Telegraph articles as well, about community being so important, and the community in Wivliscombe, and therefore having somewhere people can go brings the society together.
Yeah, pubs are... It is such a tragedy that one pub a week closes, because every time a pub closes, that's a group of people who won't be communing. That's people who are lonelier, older people who can go to the bar and sit by themselves, have a place they can't go to. The whole idea of hospitality, and it's also an incredibly important part of the British economy. And as it dies, British culture dies, and also all of the ancillary services. The farmers who are supposed to be supplying food, they're not going to. They haven't got a market for their produce.
Well, again, one of the things you write about is local sourcing of supply and getting the farmers involved. With your restaurant, will you be trying to get the supplies from as near as possible, or obviously if it's Italian, you'll have to get some things from Italy, but broadly trying to have domestic produce?
My idea for Casa Wivi at the White Hart is an Italian offering, because Italian food is, the most popular, most universally loved food on the planet, and it's accessible. It's quite economic to create pastas and pizzas and so on. Pizzas is effectively cheese on toast. And the margins are good. You can make your own pasta. Absolutely, we'll be stocking, if I'm lucky enough to get there and we can open this place, buying local produce. There's a wonderful local producer who's also a friend of mine called Dan Holmes, who produces Longhorn cattle, makes the most phenomenal beef. A slow braised brisket of Longhorn is a beautiful thing. We have great local ciders. Sheppies, for example, Burrow Hill, the great Julian Templey.
Special offer for your most distinguished clients.
I don't want to poison my guests, Jacob. And absolutely, local veg, fruit, and so on. And as much as we can, supply. Italian food culture is about ingredients, but we also have phenomenal charcuterie now in this country, and we have a great local supply of charcuterie from not far from Wellington. So, as you know better than I, Jacob, because you've lived in Somerset all your life, I'm a latter mover to this part of the world that we're happily in this evening. It's not only a beautiful county, but honestly the produce is second to none. Where we are pivoted between the English Channel for oysters, Brixham Market down on the south coast, fantastic fish, between lobsters and oysters. That's not the main thing that we're going to be selling, but fantastic lamb, fantastic beef. And I think that virtually all these things can be supplied.
And will you have veal in a white wine sauce, which is my favourite dish in Italian restaurants?
Veal in a white wine sauce, and any other thing that you like, Jacob. No rice, no
as long as it comes with
broccoli.
potatoes, that's the key.
Roast potatoes with rosemary and thyme. You know, when you sort of dice them up quite
and
thin,
not too much garlic. That's my particular bête noire. Anyway, William, I'm sure it'll be a great success. I wish you very well in it, because you are going against the trend, against the grain. William Sitwell, always a man who doesn't do what others do. Thank you very much. In a moment, seeing as we're in God's Own County, we will be speaking to a pillar of Somerset society about why the sun always shines in Somerset. Oh, and Mayor's goddaughter will be back to read out some more views on immigration, hospitality, farming and your entries for Jeremy Corbyn's new party's name.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Hello. Well, there's plenty of sunny spells across Europe, but also some widespread thunderstorms developing. So across much of Madeira and the Canary Islands, a few showers here and breezy. Across Spain, fine with plenty of sunshine, but here are those thunderstorms with the risk of hail and lightning. Across Greece, much of the country seeing plenty of sunshine here. And as we go through the week, there'll still be some showers around, but also plenty of sunshine still, and temperatures up to 33.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Miriam, you can't be serious. Scrapping the triple lock on state pensions? Madness.
Andrew, we just can't carry on pretending. The numbers just don't add up. We've got to be honest with people. We've got to face the facts. That's what people want.
Well, that's what you get on GB News and on Britain's Newsroom. Lively debates, lively conversation.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first, and we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pearce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates,
5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5. You got me good there.
Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show.
It's not a bad brand.
Yeah.
Uncensored.
Very, very racy tonight.
On the unpredictable.
What does she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News.
The People's Channel. Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Unfortunately, we can't get Mary to read the mail Moggs for complicated technical reasons, so I'm going to read them myself. I apologise for disappointing you. But Jimmy's got a very good point. He says, "Dear Jacob, back to the office, please. I would say in my defence that I would otherwise have taken a week's holiday this week." And Jason says, "For Corbyn's new party, this is a good idea. They never had a proper job party." And Ray has sent in my favourite mail Mogg. Thank you, Ray. "Just an observation. After 2 shows, it's amazing to see your children talk more basic common sense and a better sense of humour than all of your lefty guests combined." Ray, keep on sending the mail Moggs in if they're going to be as nice as that. Thank you. Now, since we're here in God's Own County, we're going to be talking to a true pillar of Somerset society who will tell us why the sun always shines here in this perfect, idyllic part of the world. Well, I'm delighted to be joined by Sir Benjamin Slade, businessman, publicist and true Somersetarian. Benji, thank you very much for joining me. We're harvest time in Somerset, and I just want you to talk to us a bit about what it was like as a child in Somerset and how things have changed compared to gathering in the harvest in your youth.
Well, I didn't do much gathering in of the harvest. That sounds like hard work. But actually, it hasn't rained much this year. So I think everything's down about 1.5 tons an acre. So they're going to be stuffed. I mean, it's going to be very bad for the farmers. Although prices are, 180 a tonne, it's tough times. In my day, when I was young, there were lots of dairy farmers. Some of them had 7 cows, some had 9. And a cousin of mine had 60. These times have totally changed. There used to be...
Because now people would have hundreds of cows, wouldn't they? It's been this huge concentration of effort and numbers.
My tenant's got 600, but he can't find anybody to milk them. You know, the foreign workers went back, and it's difficult. So there were 7 or 8 really good farmers all around me, all milking cows. They're gone. I don't know where the milk comes. There's a rumour it comes from Saudi Arabia, but I don't believe it. So these people are gone, and this industry is gone. There were lots of people who made livings on small farms. I remember the days when people have 50 or 60 acres, then it was a few hundred, and these people, I think, are going to go, in my view.
Because we think of Somerset very much as an agricultural county and look at the green field, or brown fields as they are at the moment. Yeah. But actually most people in this county aren't working in agriculture anymore, are they? They're very remote from it.
Look, there's more hairdressers than there are flipping farmers. It's absolutely true.
And that's an absolute change from where it was. And what do you think the county's success is in a sentence? Why is Somerset such a great place to be, other than that you're here to welcome good people to Somerset?
Well, it takes 2 hours to get across it. It's the 5th biggest county, and it's got 900,000 people, but it's got a lot of things like wells and Bath, and it's next door to a powerhouse called Bristol. But actually there is this this boom in Somerset. It's the biggest development in the whole of Europe, which is in Bridgewater.
In Bridgewater, and with Hinkley Point. Well, thank you very much to Sir Benji from God's Own County. That's all from me. Up next is Patrick Christie's. Patrick, I hope you'll devote the next 2 hours to the joys of Somerset.
Well, quite. Certainly preserving Somerset and indeed Britain, because I've got a big exclusive for you. In 5 minutes' time, Britain's most notorious jihadi is back out on the streets. You will not believe why they've let him out. I'll give you all that and much more. Stay tuned.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good evening. This is your latest GB News weather update coming to you from the Met Office. Most places are going to have a largely dry night, with today's showers largely dying out. However, there is a weather system out in the Atlantic that's heading our way, and it's going to bring a spell of pretty heavy and perhaps even thundery rain for many places as we go through tomorrow. Before that, though, like I said, a largely dry night across many spots, just a few showers, particularly towards the north and west. Under the dry, clearer weather, things may turn a little fresh fresh for some of us. That being said, most towns and cities holding up in double digits. Just a few rural spots could just about fall into single figures. And then it's a largely fine start to the day for many places. Across much of Scotland, there will be a good deal of sunshine early on. Just a few showery bursts here or there, particularly around some central areas. There could be a couple of showers and they could be a little bit on the heavy side. A different story for Northern Ireland, though. That weather system I highlighted here, it is going to be bringing a pretty wet start to the day, and there could be some gusty winds, maybe even some rumbles of thunder mixed in with it as well. Similar across parts of Western Wales, southwest England, an unsettled start here. Elsewhere across much of England, though, it's a fine picture through much of the morning, but that whole frontal system is going to march its way eastwards across the whole of the country. So most of us will see a spell of heavy rain, and there could be some thunder, some gusty winds mixed in. The further east you are, the later it's going to arrive. With the slightly more unsettled weather, temperatures are going to be down a couple of degrees and feeling a little bit fresher as well compared to today. Then into Thursday.